Jed MacKay and Alessandro Cappuccio begin the mission as Moon Knight sets up a new way to protect his neighborhood, using his titles as the Fist of Khonshu for good, which makes him the target for the Left Fist of Khonshu, who will do anything to stop the heretic and free their trapped god. Jed MacKay picks up Moon Knight's story after the recent Avengers story arc, which saw Khonshu try and take over the world, leading to this book being a type of reset for Moon Knight here, setting up a cool status quo for Mark Spector and a new way for him to help repay his sins against the world. I do like the idea of Mark being a no-nonsense, quite vicious hero for hire this time round, which has happened before in the past, but Jed MacKay injects a little more heroism into it this time round, with Mark wanting to make good on his mistakes and help people in his neighborhood who need it, as well as having a small group around him he can confide in, like Reese and Dr. Sturman, whose role will be his therapist throughout this whole series thanks to the events of Avengers. So it'll be interesting to see sort of those sessions in between him doing all his acts of heroism. Jed also introduces the classic Dark Mirror character in that of Dr. Badir, the Left Fist of Khonshu, which again, nothing really new, but the thing I have liked about previous Moon Knight stories is the warring ideologies of Mark and the God, and having a total religious zealot version of Moon Knight running around fighting Mark should be a lot of fun. Italian artist Alessandro Cappuccio's artwork was utterly fantastic this first issue, giving us a lot of fantastic action sequences and awesome visuals focusing on Khonshu and the various Moon Knights. Alessandro's colorist Rochelle Rosenberg also did a brilliant job, with my favorite detail of hers being that she often lit Moon Knight with the actual moon, casting this really great blue light and glow around the character that makes him sort of stand out amongst the darkness of the night. Moon Knight issue 1, while a pretty standard status quo shift first issue, was a lot of fun, putting Mark Spector on a new course in his life and continuing with the pleasing warring ideologies aspect of the character I quite enjoy. I'm going to give this issue an 8 out of 10. Moon Knight issue 1 sees the white-suited hero welcome a man to the Midnight Mission, asking how he can help. The man finds this weird, but he knows people say that he can help, so he tells Mr. Knight about people going missing on his block, and the hero says he will look into it. Later, a group of vampires leading a team of new vampires into the city tells them that it's their turn to pull in some new recruits and turn them, and only then will they reach Omnicron level. The recruits just want to go back home as the leader tells them to seize the moment. Suddenly, Moon Knight smashes through the window of the van, causing it to flip. One of the vampires escapes the van, taking off on foot when they are hit on the back of the head, a voice saying that he warned them, having painted his symbol on the walls for 2 reasons. The first is to help his people, the people who travel at night, making sure that they are safe, and the second is a warning. Moon Knight kills one of the other vampires, telling the sole survivor that this is his territory and his congregation and his mission. He intends on staking the vampire, saying that his warnings were there, but this is what happens when they are ignored. Back in the van, the recruits all get out of the wreckage, wanting to go home, but the group is confronted by Moon Knight. Before the hero can kill them, one of the recruits tell them how they were kidnapped from this neighborhood and forcibly turned into vampires, but they aren't like the other vampires and they aren't killers, since they were all vegans before they were turned. Moon Knight spares them, as later, Knight tells the story to Dr. Sturman, telling her that they were innocents despite being vampires and they were all travelers at night that need his protection. Sturman wants to talk about his religious duty, knowing that he started a church, but Moon Knight calls it a mission, since he is the High Priest of Khonshu. Sturman knows the man is Jewish though, wondering if that would be a contradiction in his terms, but Knight knows that his father was a rabbi and a war criminal, so contradictions aren't something new to him. Sturman wants to talk about Mark Spector, knowing all about his life as a US Marine before being a private military contractor, but Mark tells her not to sanitize the facts. He was a very bad man who did very bad things for people in foreign countries for money. The doctor knew he grew a conscience in North Sudan, making him stand against his fellow mercenaries, and then he died. Mark says that she is right and he did grow a conscience, but years of fighting dirty wars made his soul barren earth, and to sprout a flower there he needed to use his own blood as the water. Sturman knows that he claims an Egyptian god named Khonshu brought him back to life, and Mark confirms that happened and that he became the Fist of Khonshu, the traveler, the embracer, and the pathfinder and defender to those who travel at night. Sturman knows that this is usually where a mental health professional would be skeptical, but she agreed to be his therapist at the request of the Avengers, which is a unique situation. She knows he died 2 more times after the first time, so Mark says that once it was at the bottom of the East River and another when the Shadow Keep, his headquarters, was blown up around him. Sturman asks him a simple question: can he die? But Mark Spector has no idea. Later, Mark welcomes another person to the Midnight Mission, learning from an old woman that in her building things come out at night and they scratch at their doors and whisper things. She pleads with Mark for his help since they have already tried to take her neighbor. Later, Moon Knight fights the clones of Vermin, demanding the people stay inside their apartments as he kicks one out of the window, killing it. He tells the monsters he knows that they are Spider-Man's foes, knowing who they are and that they are some type of mad science guinea pig who hates to be alone, and since they can clone themselves, they are never alone. That is, unless he kills them all, and he can and will, since he's not Spider-Man, he's Moon Knight, and he doesn't die. He tells Vermin that losing people hurts, but the people they are hurting are his people. He tells them that they tried to take one of his, so he took one of theirs, and they can leave it at that and clear out of his territory, or they can test him further, and it's their choice. As Mark waters his plants back in his office, Sturman says that she rather likes the idea of the Midnight Mission, but she wants to talk about Khonshu, the god who brought him back, and whose duty he performs every night. Mark wants to cut right to it, since he knows Khonshu is unworthy of his or anyone's worship, knowing he tried to take over the world and he deserves to be imprisoned wherever the Aesir have kept him. Despite all of that though, Mark knows he is still his fist and he is the high priest of a god he is estranged from, and he has taken his duty as his own, since it's his debt to bear after being brought back to life. Sturman wonders what a priest at odds with his god is, wondering if that makes him a heretic. Mark tells her to take her pick, asking the arriving Reese, his receptionist, for some coffee, but she tells him to get it himself. Later, Moon Knight checks in with Reese, telling her he is almost at the clinic where an apparent supervillain attack is happening. He arrives finding the villain isn't really doing a good job, as the villain 8-Ball is beaten by Dr. Badir. Moon Knight doesn't want the man to stop beating on his account, as Badir says that 8-Ball attacked the clinic looking for OxyContin. He introduces himself to Moon Knight, telling him that he just took over the clinic, wondering when he would meet the hero. He gives Badir some cuffs for 8-Ball, knowing people don't usually say that unless they have a beef with him, but Badir says that he is the Fist of Khonshu and he has a sacred duty. Moon Knight doesn't remember seeing him at any of their church socials, but the doctor knows he recently arrived from the Home Office, disappointed at what he's seen since their god languishes in the custody of another deity and his fist is now allowing vampires to exist in territory consecrated to the duty of Khonshu. Badir finds this blasphemous as Moon Knight asks what he is, wondering if he's some sort of moon wizard or a werewolf, but whatever Khonshu crony he is, he needs to remember who he's talking to, since he's the Fist of Khonshu and a high priest, so he outranks Badir. 8-Ball says he's happy they aren't cutting his face off, as Badir says that he's just a simple doctor, but he assures Mark that there is only one who outranks him, and it sure isn't Mark Spector. Later in a park, Mark meets with Dr. Sturman and wonder if he's heard the story of Cadman, telling him of the English poet who lived in a monastery as a lay brother, thought to be simple-minded and suited for work only with animals and away from the feasting and singing the monks got up to. Soon the man was visited by an angel or a messenger, and the being told him to sing a hymn, which Cadman found he suddenly could do. Mark knows this isn't about dissociative identity disorder, and Sturman knows that they can treat his DID, but he has had brain-to-brain contact with a god, and MRIs show that his brain structure has been changed by that. Sturman says that her speciality is dealing with superhuman metasides, with cases like Jack Monroe and Rutherford Winner. She knows that contact with something rewrote Cadman's brain, and she is concerned about the changes Mark has been through and what they will go through. As Moon Knight deals with other threats around the neighborhood, he tells Sturman another doctor of his told him something similar, but once she began trying to kill him, he never got a follow-up on it. Sturman is concerned that this might cause an issue of trust in their relationship, but Mark doesn't think so, since he spent his life in dangerous places in dangerous situations, and his paranoia has been carefully cultivated into a keenly honed tool, but he can't go on living seeing enemies behind every curtain, since that's no way to live. Later on, Mark is sitting out the front of his office when Reese comes by, with Mark thinking that she's brought him coffee, but the woman says that she bought herself one before remembering she doesn't drink coffee anymore. She gives the cup to Mark as he asks why she thinks he likes her. Reese says that it's probably because that she's the only person who is biologically compelled to keep the same hours as him, but Mark says it's because she doesn't try and fix him, and it's not easy when everyone thinks thinks you're crazy, and it's even harder when they are all right. He knows that he has a job to do, and it's why he's come back from the dead over and over. Across from the mission, someone listens to their conversation, having posted up pictures of Moon Knight and his various identities on a board. The being says that Mark makes them sick, knowing that it's either Mark or Mr. Knight or Jake Lockley or Stephen Grant. The being says that they have made a project out of the man, and normally his statements are big and bold, with lots of flash and pizzazz, but Mark offends him with everything he stands for, since he has so much potential, but he is too intent on his crutch, his sacred duty. So he's going to go small and personal for Mark, wanting to break the man's faith and show him that the only thing worth believing in is nothing, and only then, when his faith is ashes, he will see what he really is. Dr. Bidir meanwhile walks past Moon Knight and Reese on the street, heading home as he begins to pray to Khonshu, saying Khonshu's fist has erred from the god's purpose and Moon Knight requires correction, and he keeps the faith and enacts the god's will and duty. Bidir says that the right hand has failed Khonshu, but his left hand will not, and his other fist and the Hunter's Moon remains faithful.